Greetings and welcome to another Center for Enlightenment production, brought to you by Bartholomew. This one is titled From Egypt to Israel, the Legacy of Psilocybin. And the picture in the background shows the two witnesses who are to come upon the scene and partaking in the cap of the pyramid, the golden cap that's missing, the cornerstone of Christ. They eat the psilocybin mushrooms and become superpowers. But you can read about that in the book of Revelation. From Egypt to Israel, a legacy of psilocybin, the quest for the tree of life. First we have to cover the cosmic fall. We're told that in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were told specifically not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, not to eat that fruit. Well, here we have depiction of the Amanta Muscaria as that tree of knowledge, with Lucifer, the morning glory. Lucifer's name plant is the morning glory, I should say, which contains lysergic acid anamines. So it's crawling up the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And Eve, or hunter-gatherer, were on the banks of the river and partaking in the seeds of the morning glory. And in that altered state of consciousness, she began a mental debate on whether or not to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. She lost that debate. And so here we are, separated. Not that I want to blame women, I certainly don't, and I'm sure you don't either, but somebody had to take the fall. Again, a more stylized picture of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, with the morning glory serpent crawling up it. Now, when the Franciscan friars got here to America, to the Americas, they found that the people did not want to receive the gospel and Jesus Christ, because they said that in the seeds of the morning glory was an entity, and that entity was who they worshipped. So more evidence indicating that Lucifer's nickname or spiritual name, physical name, is the morning glory. The heavenly blues, the pearly gates. You can see these in the seed racks when you're at the store. So who are the players? On the left we've got the serpent, or Lucifer. Lucy I like to call him, when I have to call him at all. And these seeds of the morning glory, there are two varieties in the Americas. There's Oliquia and Tiltilzin. And that's the two different morning glory species that are denoted by these seeds here. One's kind of shaped like a pyramid and the other's kind of round. And then we've got the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now that is an interesting player, because as with the morning glory and the psilocybin mushrooms and the poppies and marijuana, it has a spirit associated with it, each one being different, of course. The spirit of Amanta Muscaria is Satan, the accuser. So basically God said, don't consort with Satan. He's not for you. Then we've got psilocybin, the tree of life, on the right, which is this is the cubenesis, and you can see a little bit of the cap qualities with the circle and the circle inside of it. The occult call it the circumpunct, or the missing piece of Osiris. The morning glory. Okay, I've already told you the story of how Eve was tricked in the Garden of Eden. I should add one more story to this. The story of the unicorn. In India, there was a tale of a magical horse with a unicorn, which means literally one, corn, grain, or grain of oneness. And that is the power that these seeds have. They can produce in your temple, your body, a spirit, and that spirit is able to basically point out what you should do and what you should not do, and not focusing on what you should not do for the most part. It raises your IQ level temporarily, but it works as a credit card. You're borrowing your neurotransmitters for today, and then tomorrow your nerve system is famished. And of course, the morning glory, LSA, lysergic acid anamines, is a close cousin to LSD. Qualities of the great serpent. The biblical names of the serpent are Satan, the worm, the dragon, and glory of the morning. Sounds a bit like morning glory. The morning glory among the Olmec. Here we see an Olmec shaman or warrior. With his hand, in his right hand, he's got a basket, and the basket is for the collection of the seeds. So they collected the seeds. You can see here, you get to know this over time. These little cross belts here are basic symbolism for the morning glory flower. It really has 5 points and is in a circle. The pentagram comes to mind. Was that the origin of the pentagram? We don't know, but it sure could be. It's the best candidate so far. Then in Teotihuacan, which is the equivalent of the Great Pyramids of Giza in Egypt, we have the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, and the temple, the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent. Now we know that that city was burned with fire. It was abandoned after being burned. And we find inside of the Luciferian temple of the Feathered Serpent the bodies of prisoners whose hands were bound behind their backs, and they were put and sealed into this temple as it was being created alive, as guardians of the temple. But when they finally burned the whole city down with fire, it was pretty clear that one of the main focuses of the fire was the temple of the Feathered Serpent. The people's power had been usurped for too long. Among the Maya, he was known as the Vision Serpent, or Kukulkan. And you can see here the way that the Mayans contacted this deity, this serpent within the seeds of morning glories, was by bloodletting. So each of those little pieces of paper there has blood spotted onto it, and they made that as an offering, a self-sacrifice, to get the Vision Serpent to commune with them, to talk with them. Here's a picture from the Franciscan friar period when they were first taking over, conquering the Indians, and it shows the morning glory clearly depicted here and calls it Oliquia. This Oliquia is also basically related to the Aztec deity Huitzilopochtli, or the sweet pork chop, I like to call him. And you have to get creative when you get out on your own in these kinds of fields. But I've been studying the anthropologic history of the entheogens for over 30 years. Here we've got the hummingbird, because the hummingbirds visit these morning glories. And we've got the hummingbird coming to a flower out of the third eye of Huitzilopochtli. In his left hand, he holds the serpent. Note that it's his left hand, by the way. The left-handed path is denoted. And out of the potion or cup rises the serpent spirit. And again, the cross, the iron cross, relates to the morning glory. Among the Greeks, we found this piece of pottery, which shows basically a preternatural entity. He's got the ears that show that he has supernatural or preternatural hearing. Preternatural simply means of the demonic. He's got the goatee, like a goat, a nose ring. Never was strong on nose rings, but each to their own. And those preternatural ears. Here's another vase showing the morning glory vine. Its basic spade-like tail is where the devil gets his tail from. He's red like a bull because of Amanita muscaria's coloring, and he has horns like a bull because, again, in the East, the Amanita muscaria was known as the red bull of the mountain. Also, take a note of the glyphs. This is the tendril of the morning glory. And here we have up close, he's got a morning glory in his eye, a little symbol of his state of consciousness, and a feathered serpent or a winged serpent as his headdress. It's interesting to note that at the forge, or the ironworks, is a place where the artist is always looking for inspiration, and seems to have found LSA or LSD to be very stimulating to the creative process. Again, the tree of knowledge is colored like a stop sign. In nature, early humans would have seen this and known instinctively, had they not spoken to God through psilocybin, that this was a danger zone. This is a bad thing, not a good thing to eat. But it says, and she took and ate of the fruit, and so did Adam. Among the Mayan, this tree was known, this Amanita muscaria. Here you can see it depicted in iconography above with the red cap and the white spots. He's eating this mushroom. And here we have a French century church from 1200 AD showing a knowledge at that time in the churches that the tree of knowledge of good and evil was the Amanita muscaria. We're going to go a little faster because we have a lot of slides to cover, but feel free to pause it and come back when you're ready. Among the Neanderthals, we get this Venus of Willendorf, which is a red painted statue of a goddess figure, and the Amanita muscaria cap on the head. So that's because, of course, Eve took the first bite. Again, we see the spiral in the symbols, modern day symbols of the goddess, and that spiral goes back to the spiral of the flower before it opens and the curl of the tendrils. Here we have another votive. This one shows a bee head or a fly head and has gills like a mushroom. And that's because Amanita muscaria was called the fly agaric. When flies land on that cap, they become stunned and fall off. The nature of cubinesis, you got to have basic fundamental understanding. What the artist would display as psilocybin would come directly from the anatomical aspects of the mushroom itself. So here we know it has a hollow stem, or hollow be thy name, tanning. Of course, those are different words, but still, there is something to it. It's got a ring, doesn't it? The tanning of the cap, you can see how the cubinesis and many of the species of psilocybin tan with the sunlight. Up on the top, you see the little tiny white dots. That in the Bible was called the eyes of doves washed in milk. So they had really pretty ways of talking, flowery, you might say. And this would have been considered an earth flower, because there was no kingdom of mushrooms or fungus at that time. It has a veil which tears, which I believe is connected with the tearing of the veil at the crucifixion of Christ. God said, no more is it going to be a secret. And so it broke out among the early Jews and Christians who partook of this name. The scarlet caps, and then the cap that turns into a bird's nest, or a cup, or a grail, as in the Holy Grail. Another aspect of this mushroom, the tree of life, is the umbo, or the little nipple on top. Its bluing reaction, they say if it doesn't blue, don't bother. Gold to scarlet caps, white base, purple veil, that's the ring. You can see some purpling here from the spores. Splits in the cap. The white specks on the cap's surface. You know these things now. Keep them in mind because the artist will display different aspects of this mushroom in the artwork, but it denotes this mushroom. This mushroom has these qualities, and the artwork has the qualities. You're probably looking closer to a 1-to-1 match. It's been displayed as the hand of the Almighty, or the Hamas, or Chamas, as the Jews call it. It is the name of God which can't be spoken with your mouth. The name you can't name. Funny how Voldemort got that title. It's probably a coincidence. Another of the Hamases, or Chimas. Notice the double thumb and the mushroom coming up the middle with a third eye or open eye, all seeing. Alright, now we'll tackle the discovery of Noah's Ark in the mountains of Arat in Turkey. They found a 515-foot long boat which contains petrified animal dung, as well as petrified antler, and you can find out more at anchorstone.org. This is the shape of it. The flood took place, we believe it was about 3000 BC that it took place, just after the finishing of the main pyramid, the Great Pyramid, which survived. And that is a sign to us that it survived, because apparently that pre-flood or pre-deluge people made two different monuments. One they made of clay and one they made of stone. And that was because if fire destroyed the earth, see, they knew it was coming, but they didn't know what form, then the clay would bake and the monument would remain for humanity to find afterwards. If it was made of stone and we had a flood, as we did, then you've got the stone pyramid of Giza, or the Great Pyramid, and it was a source of great insight to the Egyptians when they came down after the flood. They came and inhabited Egypt, which is one of the names of the descendants of Noah, Egypt, or Miriam. This depiction of Noah's Ark in Life magazine. This is the stone anchors that this boat used. See how massive they were. Noah, although not considered to be genetically pure, this is what the Christian camp teaches, must have been a giant. In fact, the bones Ron Wyatt recorded of a individual who died up on the mountains, not that mountain in the background, that's Mount Ararat, where lots of people looked for Noah's Ark but never found it. But these bones were 9 feet tall. So we're dealing with cross between humanoid and Neanderthal, I think. Of course, that's all this is. That's what I think. You're looking at 30 years of intense study. And although I only hold a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology, I do hold an honorary Doctorate of Divinity from the Rose Chapel College. And I've been educated at the University of Psilocybin, or Psychedelic State, for 30 years. So I've done a lot of treading and tracking trails, as Dave Matthews puts it. A lot of thinking. There were metal rivets with titanium in them all along the boat that held it together. This is an interesting one because this is the building of the Tower of Babel, where humans basically worked together to build this tower, and it shows the mushroom in the background all around it. So they didn't reject it, they just started microdosing. This is a deep look into the poppy, which is Gabriel's name. You know that Muhammad was trained by Gabriel, or taught what to write in the Quran by Gabriel. And he did so in a cave, and it's very likely that he was consuming good, solid, massive amounts of opium, which we know the Arabs always have an affinity for because it grows in their climate. Symbolism of the poppy, Gabriel's name, plant, which is just to say when you partake of the poppy, you're bringing over your body, over your temple, the spirit of Gabriel. Now, that changes when you get man-made chemicals, so I would stay away from the man-made stuff. But growing a few poppies in your backyard and taking 6 or 7 of the poppy heads and putting them in a pan with butter and letting them smoke and incense the house really brings an incredibly peaceful calm over the house, over the household. Or you can take it and make tea out of it. But the symbol was that of a cobra, and that's believed to be because the Greeks thought that all medical property-oriented or containing plants, all medicine plants, were bitten by serpents, and so because they had venom in them. So the venom from the snake goes into the plant and makes it have medical properties. This was our white coat medical system back then. Here we have from a New Jersey courthouse in Somerset this picture of the poppy, and you see the cobra head in the petal, And you see over here 2 fang marks in the poppy capsule. Oops, we missed one. Previous. When the plant is young, it also looks like a cobra. This is obviously, God's design that the plant should look this way, and mankind should discover these things about it. But it's cobra-esque. Here in a Roman villa, we have the poppy coming out, or the serpent, not Lucifer, not the morning glory, but the poppy, having on its head a crown of the lily and coming out of a poppy leaf. And they're surrounding the peacock of them all, the psilocybin mushrooms, in a grail cup. Again, the spots could also be from these cobra, the eye spots. Again, there's the poppy capsule with the eye spots. And even on our $20 bill, before we invaded Afghanistan and took over the poppy fields, there was the cobra here at the base, and the money basically had this symbol of the opium poppies. People have tried to call it the acanthia leaf, which looks a little bit like it, but has no medical properties and is not significant enough to put on money in the first place. Hidden in the carpets, you have oriental carpets or flying carpets. You'll have little designs like a lion face, and then a grail cup with a mushroom coming out of it. Or this one here, where you see the scallop shell for the nose. Scallop shell being the shell on which Venus appeared to the Greeks. So see, the Greeks basically worshipped their ancestors, the 8 ancestors of Noah, Adam, Eve, Seth, Cain, Abel. Are we able to make these connections? That's what I'm hoping and praying you guys are ready for. This is big stuff. It's real paradigm shifting, which we need because we're trying to create a hell on earth down here right now. This is an ancient symbol for the mushroom, the scallop shell. Venus, I said, arrived on a scallop shell. She was the only goddess of all the gods in the pantheon who was not an ancestor. And she is demarcated by the golden apple, or to the most beautiful or fair of them all, as the apple once had written on it. Because if you know your Greek history, mythology, you'll know that story. But basically, Venus is what they would call the feminine element of the psilocybin mushroom, or the compassionate, sensitive, attractive, alluring aspect. And there we have the mushroom, denoted in the face of the lion, and also in the eye. It's a lion because the mushroom is associated with the Lion of Judah, with God. It's God's name. It calls God. Now, not everybody who eats mushrooms has a religious experience, but enough do that you say it causes religious experiences. One of my teachers, Stephen, let's see, I'm not going to be able to drag his name up right now. Steve Peel, I did it. Amazing how you can get to the answer you need by throwing out something that you don't care about. It's like you're pulling a thought out of the way. And since you all had your brain fart moments, I'm sure you'll bear with mine. The grail cup that puts the carpet in motion. It's not called a magic carpet just for fun. It's what you sit down on and have your journey on. These are more mushrooms found in common rug patterns, carpet patterns. Again, this is an Afghan rug. It's got the psilocybin mushroom with the all-seeing eye in the top of the pyramid or cap. There's the Cobra-esque at the bottom of the $20 bill. You'll notice the new $20 bills don't actually have the opium poppies on them. It's like they thought, well, people might get wise if we take over and set up the Northern Alliance to grow our poppies for us and produce the heroin that we need in order to addict the people, in order to take their property away from them, which is all CIA black ops. But it was done, and it is being done. Again, another example of that is how the Crips and the Bloods have the numbers 13 and 14. And that was created by a CIA asset that brought these concepts to life when they turned cocaine into crack cocaine by adding a little baking soda, stirring the white mixture up, and putting it in the microwave until crystals were formed. So that's how you get your crack cocaine, and your Crips and your Bloods come from the 13 and the 14 pieces of Nimrod, who later is transmuted, almost magically, into Osiris. The same story, just told from a different perspective. The good guys are bad guys, and the bad guys are the good guys. Paradise in Egypt. You see down here 3 different plants. This is the one with the eyes, is possibly the poppy plant, as we looked at the eyes of the cobra. And this is the mandrake. And then we have the thistle, which also is denotive of the poppy. These eyed, orange-capped, could well be psilocybe. You'll see there's a little white ring there, right at the base. These are all psilocybin mushrooms. This is papyrus. This guy is Amun-Ra, I believe, or maybe just a pharaoh, but he's got the blue staining. Again, if it doesn't blue, don't bother. And upon the heads of Egyptians in their tomb art, they depicted the psilocybin mushroom as a cap, probably where the Jew gets the yarmulke. All right. Here we got another set of cones with eyes in them for the cubensis, or the psilocybin mushrooms. Although there's now 200 species of the psilocybin-containing mushrooms, none of which are toxic or deadly, all of which contain varying amounts of psilocin and psilocybin, sometimes baeocystine and norobaeocystine. You hear they're praying to the god, again, probably Amun-Ra, which has the primordia cap of psilocybin on his head. More tomb art. Where better to display your belief in the afterlife than in the tombs? And so you see lots of psilocybin cubensis mushrooms with eyes, denoting consciousness. And you see the mandrake plant, another psychotropic, which has healing properties, probably Raphael's domain. What I mean by that is, again, each plant of psychotropic powers, especially the significant ones, were associated with angels, except psilocybin, which is associated with the name of God and Jesus, who said, I have not shared the name with you yet at the Last Supper. Just remarkable how the towers themselves, the columns themselves, have mushroom-esque gills and a ring. Subjugation, okay. This is where we get into Israel. Israel came out of the east and took over the land of Canaan. Actually, they didn't take over. They just had a large population of a few hundred. And they came down because of Joseph, who had been sold into slavery and was then the head, the second most powerful person in all of Egypt, after he proved himself by divining the meaning of the dreams, the 7 cows and the 7 grains of wheat. The famine that came. So here you have the subjugation, and they're paying tribute with little blue mushrooms. After Exodus, which was 1446 BC, we've got the rise of Akhenaten. Akhenaten was the first to be really humble about his appearance. He didn't depict himself as looking real good. And he's holding up the lilies, the bluing lily, one of Gabriel's entourage, because it contains apomorphine and can be ordered online. Soaking it in vodka makes an excellent martini. A little splash of lemon or lime turns the whole thing pink. You should try it. But I'm not to advocate such things. This is for educational purposes only. The mandrake, here depicted around Nefertiti's neck. She was married to Akhenaten. And it shows that the women had an interest in wine and spices. depiction of holding up the psilocybin mushroom caps to the sun. They believed the sun was God. So 100 years after Exodus, they basically changed their whole religion. So there weren't a pantheon, there weren't multiple gods, but just one God, which they called Actin, I think. Anyway, that was the sun, and it was basically because of the Jews, because of the Hebrews, at 1446 busted out of there with the 10 plagues. Then 100 years later, you would expect that the society, which was just wrecked, just trashed by this Exodus, would have changed. And they did in fact change. They had a whole new idea that maybe there was just one God after all. And he must be the sun because that's the most powerful thing around. Here Nefertiti is offering, or a queen is offering her king these medicines: the lotus, the blue lotus or lily of the Nile, and the mandrake. This is milk and honey, the land of milk and honey, when you start to get into Hebrew history, and this is basically a garment or a piece of artwork made out of cloth and quilted, and it shows baskets of what look like mushrooms. It could be the manna, which was a mushroom but not a psychedelic mushroom, or it could be the hidden manna in Revelations, which is thought by some, myself included, to be the psilocybin mushroom, tree of life. Here we have the staff, or was staff, bowing to the psilocybin mushroom, or the ankh, the tree of life. And you can see clearly the dinosaur-like features of the was staff. And the was staff is Amanita muscaria. So if you were going to render this into English, you would say Satan, the name plant being Amanita muscaria, here depicted bowing, bows to Christ and God. A very true statement. Hebrew history is made, the Ten Commandments. This is a really intricate piece. It was a breastplate worn by the high priest, and it shows the scallop shell, again tying to the Greeks with the Venus symbol. And Venus was basically the psilocybin mushroom and the spirit behind it, the only god not created out of the ancestors. Here's the Ten Commandments. Priest wearing the vest, the garment, plate, I should say. And notice the hands down here at the bottom. Notice how they make the psilocybin mushroom shape in their shadows. These are some seashells. This, again, the scallop shell with the mushroom twists or curls. The ionic column, for example. Here's the Torah scrolls, and they show mushrooms on the top of the pointing hands, the hand that you use to read with. You've probably seen them in the movies using that little pointer on the scroll. Here's a really well depicted poppy with a mushroom cap on top, and humanity must have gathered that the top of the poppy looks like the bottom of the mushroom. So put the two together and you have milk and honey. Here we have the lotus, the blue lily of the Nile, and a little mushroom set on top of that. Now we're skipping all the way to the 4th century AD, and you see that the men are still blue because of the staining killer. Don't bother otherwise. This is the axe head. If you know your Bible, you know the story of the axe that flies into the water and the prophet who summons it up out of the water as though by levitation, although it was probably in the hands of an invisible being. Here you have the arrow shaft on top, and that denotes to the line of Seth, which is maybe coming up in a bit, but I won't get into it here. You have enough on your plate just to follow me through these basic understandings that psilocybin was very popular. Here you see they're trampling not grapes but psilocybin mushrooms. Close up. and they're making wine, mushroom wine, possibly called new wine in the Bible. Levite priests all wore blue garbs with golden bells around the hem and lived in towns that were surrounded by cattle pasture. They also told the they were also told to minister in the name of God. So in the name, in its presence. Living water, 92% water, 8% matter. Close-up of the hidden manna, or heavenly manna, I like to call it. This is a gold medallion showing the Messiah, and in it they show psilocybin mushrooms, portrayed here by the man with a bed on his back. That's the man that was told to get up and walk. Well, somehow he connected Christ's miracle with the psilocybin mushroom. And if you study Maria Sabina, really the mother of psilocybin mushrooms, because she was the one who brought it to the attention of the West. It had been forgotten. It was lost. The word was lost, or the lost word, as the Freemasons say. Here you have the three wise men meeting with Mary and the baby, and again you have the mushrooms depicted in the background. This is a 6th century or 600 AD gold medallion. Here's again a piece of the cloth, and it shows the visitation where Mary has a halo, and in the halo look like poppies or thistle symbols, while in this cup-like stature here in the apertures that they're standing above, you have two little gold-capped nippled mushrooms. And this is Gabriel, so hence Gabriel's name is in her halo. And this is Elizabeth. We'll skip faster now. Mary with Jesus. Look how Mary is just looking at this fruit of the tree of life, the body of Christ. Is she not just staring at that in wonder? Before the veil was torn, before these things open up and leave a ring around it, is a significant understanding that this would have to be in the artwork for the artist to be talking about this mushroom. So here we have where the Christian Jews fled to in Cappadocia, in the underground towns, and above ground you have the carvings that they left. These are houses that they lived in. They're sandstone, and they carved into them the symbolism of the mushroom. A keyhole look at it. So they're basically playing Smurfs, to put it too lightly. One of the mushroom-shaped houses with the door of the man for size. Another carving left behind. More carved monasteries. Inside the monasteries we can get the absolute affirmation that they're talking about psilocybin in early Christianity, because you've got this guy with these glowing white eyes and a great big halo, and in his cape we see a depiction of the psilocybin mushroom. This comes from Gorm, Cappadocia, Turkey. A little window in the Smurf hut. More like that. God's country. And more. And here the veil is unbroken on these. So it comes just like the real mushroom. More than you can spit at, eh, Camel? I also had gardens of rock mushrooms there. They just carved out these phallic symbols of the mushroom. And that's why God said, I made him in my image. I made them male and female. What does a man have that a woman does not have, that is also the image of God, or the image, the shape, the size, the mushroom? Bible covers were even illustrated that had mushroom-esque, if not very well depicted, mushrooms in them. Here's another great Bible cover. It shows the Grail cup with the mushroom rising right out of it. and the symbol for Luke on its cover. These are pictures from inside the Bibles. This, I believe, is the Book of Canterbury. And as you see the tree of life depicted in heaven. And this is the story of Lazarus, the poor man who had it bad in life but had it good in the afterlife. And I think we can believe in heaven and not just say it's a pie in the sky like some of the Rasta, Desiree, for example, say. Because when you die, DMT is released and you have a near-death experience. And we have a whole lot of reports of life after death from people who've had the near-death experience. Secondly, psilocybin is basically DMT. It's an orally active version of DMT with one molecule different from DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is the dream hormone. And that one little difference seems to activate the conscience in a person who partakes in it. These are the three wise men following the star. You can see them pointing, and they have very psilocybin mushroom-esque with the lily tied in, showing the lily is really this mushroom. You see how bright and shiny it is around the edges of the mushroom? That's the artist trying to tell you, look closely at this. See with your eyes, hear with your ears, understand with your heart. Here we have John, the Apostle John, and he's writing the book of Revelation, as well as perhaps a letter and the book of John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. He was attempted to be killed by boiling him in oil, but he did not boil. And here he is revealing with a halo, a blue halo around his head, revealing the living water. This is the books. This is another Bible book called the Moravian Bible. I think that's right. And you've got the mushroom shown as two fish, which is a story I don't have time for today, but the fish was a symbol of Christ as well. And this is the true vine the birds are nibbling at here. Christ was known from east to west. In the east, when people partook of the psilocybin mushrooms, they often came in their own name. So, my name is Babahari Ramdas. And so people would love you and worship you because you came in your own name. You showed up to them using the psilocybin mushroom, but not telling anybody that that's the source of your inspiration. So you sure look darn smart. Huh, Chris Martin? Smart. But you got to reveal the truth. You got to say, it's the name, it's the Holy Spirit working in me that is giving me these insights. Again, that guy was bluing for a reason. Last Supper revelation. This is where Judas and Jesus reach into the bowl of bread, and Judas takes the bread and runs into the night. Could you imagine if you wanted to crash a mushroom party and you wanted to get everybody busted? You'd steal a mushroom and then go and tattle. Alright, this is getting long and you guys are getting full, so I'm just going to point out the mushrooms in the halo here as the saints look at the Grail Cup and at the body, the blood and the body of Christ. Here's Jesus on the cross. Here's Jesus after he's resurrected with the tomb clothes that were wrapped around his waist here. They're detailed in depiction covering his body, and he is picking a magic mushroom. Basically, he said to Mary Magdalene, "Don't hang on me. Don't hang on me right now because I haven't returned to the Father yet." So he was risen, but he had yet to be able to pass through doors that are locked. Again, our $50 bill has the scallop shell with the mushroom qualities, and the scallop shell being used as a halo among the Romans. And in the right hand, he's holding what appears to be a double-headed mushroom. This guy, too, is holding a mushroom. These are basically governors of Rome who are saying, we've converted to Christianity and we are partaking of the name. Again, the hollow stem, the cap represented here in the fountain of life. This is a stone box in which you see the church itself as a big mushroom and the Bible coming out of that church. Saint Basil, of course, if this isn't inspired by psilocybin, then you might as well wipe everything else that I said out, because if you have eyes to see, it's clear as a bell. A kind of classic period where all the icons were destroyed, or lots of the images showing angels with mushrooms, as you see here, were destroyed. And so, of course, we didn't find it as stuff in our history books. It was eradicated. Again, a review of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Satan's name, plant. I've eaten the Amanita muscaria back before I was saved. And, it gives you Spock-like reasoning capabilities. I can understand why the Rothschilds might be partakers of this, or at one time users of Amanita muscaria, because Rothschild means red shield. And although it's a fictitious name that they gave to themselves and later legally passed down, it does seem to tie back to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Cosmic fall. The First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting any establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, which means you should be able to eat mushrooms, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, which is all taken over, hence Project Mockingbird from the CIA, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble, but wisely, because they try to get FBI agents in there and get you to do it January 6th all over again. And petition the government for redresses of grievances. Amen. Thank you for participating in the intellectual documentation of the history of Israel, from Egypt to Israel.